My best friend accused me of betraying him, but he was the one sleeping with my girlfriend. My name's Marcos, and I'm 26 years old. I never thought I'd be standing here, questioning everything I know about friendship and love. Stefan, my best friend since childhood, the one person I trusted with my life, just accused me of something I would never do. Betraying him. The words hit me like a punch in the gut, knocking the air right out of my lungs. We were sitting in our usual spot at the bar, the one we've been going to for years. I could sense something was off with him, but I thought maybe it was work or something else. I never imagined it had anything to do with me. He sat there, swirling his drink, avoiding eye contact, and I felt the tension building between us like a storm about to break. Marcos, I've been thinking. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. Stefan finally said, his voice low, almost trembling. I stared at him, dumbfounded, trying to process what he had just said. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice thick with confusion. Trust? What the hell was he implying? We've always had each other's backs. How could he say that? He looked up at me, his eyes cold. Accusing. I know what you did. Don't act like you don't know. You betrayed me. His words felt like a slap. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Betray him? In what way? I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten, a wave of nausea creeping over me. Stefan, what the hell are you talking about? I haven't done anything to betray you, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. This wasn't making any sense. My best friend was sitting here, accusing me of something, but he wouldn't even explain what it was. You've been going behind my back. I know you've been talking to people about me, spreading lies. Continued, his voice growing more intense. Do you think I'm stupid, Marcos? I know you've been trying to ruin my life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Talking to people? Spreading lies? None of it was true, and yet here he was, accusing me of being some kind of backstabber. My heart was pounding in my chest, hurt swelling inside me like a wound I didn't know how to heal. Stefan, I swear, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never said a bad word about you to anyone, I said, leaning forward trying to reach him, trying to understand why my best friend would suddenly think I'd betray him like this. But he wasn't having it. He slammed his hand on the table, causing the glasses to shake. Don't lie to me. I trusted you, Marcos. I trusted you with everything, and you went behind my back. His outburst caught the attention of the people around us, but I didn't care. My whole world was collapsing in on itself, and I couldn't figure out why. I was angry, but more than that, I was hurt. The one person I thought I could always count on was turning against me. I've never lied to you, Stefan. I shot back, my voice breaking. I would never betray you. We've been through too much together. Why would you even think that? For a moment there was silence between us. He sat back in his chair, looking at me like I was some kind of stranger. The bond we had, that unspoken connection of years of friendship, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Because you're not the person I thought you were? Stefan muttered, his voice cold. I thought you were my friend, but you've proven me wrong. Hearing those words broke something inside me. I felt tears burning at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. How could he think this of me? How could he believe that I would ever betray him? The betrayal wasn't just in his accusation. It was in the fact that he had already made up his mind. He didn't trust me anymore. And that realization hit harder than any punch could. I stood up, the weight of his words heavy on my shoulders. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the air between us was suffocating. Stefan, I don't know what's going on, but I'm telling you the truth. I've done nothing but be loyal to you. If you don't believe me, I don't know what else to say. He didn't respond. He just looked away, his jaw clenched, as if I wasn't even worth listening to anymore. The silence between us was unbearable. Couldn't stand it. Without another word, I turned and left the bar, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked out into the cool night air, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. This was the man I called my brother. The one I shared everything with. And now he was accusing me of something I hadn't done. I couldn't understand it. But had changed. Why did he suddenly see me as his enemy? As I made my way home, my mind raced with questions. What had happened between us? Where had this accusation even come from? I knew one thing for sure. things would never be the same again. The days following Stefan's accusation were like a blur. I tried to push it to the back of my mind, to convince myself that he'd come around and realize how ridiculous it all was. But as the silence between us stretched on, the weight of his words lingered like a dark cloud over my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play, something I wasn't seeing. And then, there was Michelle. She had always been my anchor. Whenever things felt off or chaotic, she was the one who grounded me. But lately, even she seemed distant. I'd catch her staring off into space, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, or she'd be lost in thought, barely hearing me when I spoke to her. At first, I chalked it up to stress. She had been swamped at work, and I didn't want to add to her burden by unloading all my problems with Stefan. But as the days turned into weeks, her behavior became harder to ignore. She'd cancel plans last minute, claiming she had to stay late at the office, or that she was meeting up with friends from work. But when I'd offer to pick her up or join them, she'd quickly shut down the idea, saying it wasn't a big deal or that she needed some space. It didn't sit right with me. The Michelle I knew wasn't like this. She was open, honest, and always eager to spend time together. One evening, I decided to confront her about it. We were sitting on the couch, a movie playing in the background, though neither of us was paying much attention. She had her phone in her hand again, scrolling through something I couldn't see. "Michelle, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced up at me, her expression unreadable, before setting her phone down. "Of course. What's up?" I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to even begin. "It's just, I feel like we haven't really been on the same page lately. You've been distant, and I'm not sure why. Is everything okay?" She looked away, her brow furrowing slightly. "I've just been busy, Marcos. Work has been crazy, and I've had a lot on my mind. It's nothing to worry about." But the thing was, I was worried. There was something in the way she said it, something dismissive, like she was brushing me off. And then, as if to make things worse, her phone buzzed on the table. She quickly reached for it, her fingers moving swiftly to silence the notification, but not before I saw the name flash across the screen. Stefan. My stomach twisted. Why would Stefan be messaging her? They were friendly, sure, but they'd never been that close. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that maybe he was reaching out to her for advice or to talk about what had happened between us. But the seed of doubt was already planted. "You're still talking to Stefan?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. She flinched at the accusation, her eyes narrowing. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be? He's your best friend, Marcos." He was my best friend. Things have been complicated between us. I could feel my frustration bubbling to the surface. "I just don't understand why he'd be messaging you." Michelle sighed, clearly exasperated. "He's going through something, Marcos. He didn't go into detail, but he's upset. He didn't tell me much about what's going on with you two, but he sounded hurt." Hurt. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. He accused me of betraying him, Michelle, out of nowhere, and now you're saying he's the one who's hurt? She shifted uncomfortably on the couch, avoiding my gaze. "I don't know, Marcos. I'm just trying to be there for him as a friend. He's obviously going through something." I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. Something wasn't adding up. Why was she being so defensive? Why was she still talking to Stefan when she knew what had happened between us? "Are you sure that's all it is?" I asked, my voice low, almost afraid of the answer. "Just friendship?" Michelle's eyes snapped up to meet mine, anger flashing across her face. "What the hell are you implying? Do you really think I'd—" She stopped herself, shaking her head in disbelief. "Unbelievable. After everything we've been through, you think I'd betray you like that?" Her words hung in the air between us, thick with tension. I wanted to believe her. I really did. There was something off in the way she reacted, something too defensive, too quick to shut the conversation down. "I don't know what to think anymore, Michelle," I admitted, my voice breaking. "Stefan's acting like I'm the one who's betrayed him, and now I feel like I don't even know you." She stood up abruptly, grabbing her phone from the table. "I'm not having this conversation. If you can't trust me, then maybe we need some space." And just like that, she walked out of the room, leaving me alone on the couch, my mind racing. The doubt was eating me alive. Was I overthinking everything? Was I letting Stefan's accusations cloud my judgment? Or was there something more going on between the two of them? I sat there in the dark, replaying the last few weeks in my head. The missed calls, the late nights at work, the sudden distance between us, it all started to feel like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The next day, I tried to shake off the doubt, telling myself that I was just being paranoid. But when Michelle left for work that morning, something gnawed at me, feeling deep in my gut that wouldn't go away. I picked up my phone and hesitated for a moment before making a decision I never thought I'd have to make. I scrolled through her recent messages. I hated myself for it. I hated the idea of invading her privacy, of betraying her trust in this way. But I needed answers. I couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. As I scrolled through the texts, my heart pounded in my chest, praying that I wouldn't find anything, praying that I was just being paranoid. But then, I saw it. A string of messages between her and Stefan. At first, it seemed innocent enough, just casual conversation, nothing alarming. But the deeper I went, the more unsettling it became. Inside jokes, late-night messages, plans to meet up without me knowing, and then the words that shattered me completely. I miss you. It was from Stefan, my best friend, and Michelle had replied, I miss you too. The world around me crumbled. I sat there, staring at the screen, unable to breathe. The doubts that had been gnawing at me were now a reality. They were betraying me, both of them. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages, each one worse than the last. Every exchange between Michelle and Stefan felt like a punch to the gut. The late-night texts, cryptic messages about meeting up when I wasn't around, it was all laid out right in front of me, undeniable evidence of their betrayal. I had trusted them. They were the two people I thought I could count on more than anyone else. Stefan had been my best friend for years, the kind of friend you share everything with. And Michelle, she was the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. And now, they were both stabbing me in the back. The knot in my stomach tightened as I kept reading. My heart raced, my thoughts swirling into a hurricane of confusion, anger, and heartbreak. It wasn't just the words they exchanged, it was the tone. The familiarity, the way they spoke to each other like I didn't even exist. How long had this been going on? I'd been so blind. All the signs were there. The way Michelle had been pulling away from me, Stefan's sudden accusations about betrayal, the late nights, the secretive conversations. I had brushed it off as stress or miscommunication. I had wanted to believe that everything was fine, that my best friend and my girlfriend were just having a hard time. But now, there was no denying it. They had been lying to me, cheating. And worst of all, they had made me feel like the one at fault, like I was the one who was breaking things apart. My vision blurred as tears welled up, but I quickly wiped them away. Anger replaced the heartbreak and I felt the heat rise in my chest. How dare they? How could they do this to me? The people I had trusted with everything. My heart, my friendship, my life, had been scheming behind my back, betraying me in the worst possible way. I threw my phone down onto the table, the sound echoing in the quiet room. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to do anything to release the rage that was boiling inside me. But I felt paralyzed by the weight of it all, trapped in a spiral of shock and disbelief. How long had I been living in a lie? How many times had they smiled in my face while secretly laughing behind my back? I got up from the couch, pacing the room as the storm inside me grew. The memories flashed in my mind, every time I'd seen them together, every joke they'd shared, every moment that now felt tainted. I had trusted them both so completely, never once suspecting that they were capable of something like this. And then, a thought hit me. So painful it nearly brought me to my knees. Was I just some joke to them? Had they been planning this all along, laughing at how clueless I was? Had every moment I shared with Michelle, every intimate conversation, every plan for the future, had it all been a lie? I needed answers. I needed to confront them both, to hear it from their own mouths, even though I already knew the truth deep down. Messages were clear enough, but part of me needed to hear it, face them, to see their guilt. I grabbed my phone again, my hands shaking as I dialed Stefan's number. Line rang once, twice, and then he picked up. voice casual, as if nothing had happened. Hey man, what's up? I almost choked on the rage I felt building in my throat. How could he act so normal? How could he pretend like everything was fine when I knew what he had done? We need to talk, I said, my voice barely steady. There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear the tension creeping into his voice. Okay. About what? About Michelle. About you. The words came out cold, sharper than I intended. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel his hesitation, the wheels in his head turning as he tried to figure out what I knew. Marcos, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Stefan, I snapped, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. I know everything. The messages, the meetings, all of it. I know what you've been doing behind my back. There was a long pause, and for a moment, I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke, his voice low, almost defeated. Marcos, save it. I cut him off, not wanting to hear his excuses. How long? How long have you been screwing my girlfriend, Stefan? How long have you been lying to my face? I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end, and then finally, he spoke the words I had dreaded. It's not what you think, Marcos. It just happened. It wasn't planned. I laughed bitterly, feeling the anger swell in my chest. It just happened? You don't accidentally sleep with your best friend's girlfriend, Stefan. That's not something that just happened. I'm sorry, man, he said quietly, and for a moment I could almost hear the guilt in his voice. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I clenched my fists, my whole body shaking with fury. You didn't mean for it to get this far? You've already destroyed everything, Stefan. You betrayed me. You both did. I hung up before he could say anything else. I couldn't listen to any more of his lies. Pathetic apologies. Didn't matter. The damage was done. I stood outside Michelle's apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced with all the things I wanted to say, all the anger and hurt that had built up inside me since I discovered the truth. It was hard to believe that the two people I trusted most had betrayed me. I needed answers. I needed to face them both, to see the truth in their eyes. I knocked on the door, my hand trembling slightly. Part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this was all a mistake, that I had misunderstood everything. But deep down, I knew. The evidence was too clear to ignore. The door creaked open, and there she stood, Michelle. Her face looked tired, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Shame? I couldn't tell, but she quickly masked it with an indifferent expression. Marcos, what are you doing here? Her voice was cautious, like she knew what was coming. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, the weight of what I had to say pressing down on me. Where's Stefan? Her eyes darted away, and she fidgeted with the sleeve of her sweater. He's not here. Liar. I spat, my voice colder than I intended. I didn't care anymore. I know everything, Michelle. I saw the messages. I know about you and Stefan. Her face paled, and she took a step back, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find the right words. But there were no right words. Not for something like this. Marcos, it's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Not what I think? You've been sleeping with my best friend behind my back, and you expect me to believe it's not what I think? Do you even hear yourself? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. The betrayal had cut too deep, leaving me numb to any emotion other than anger. She tried to step closer to me, reaching out with her hand as if to touch me, to make it all better. Please, just let me explain, she whispered, her voice cracking. Before she could say anything else, the door behind her opened, and there he was. Stefan. His presence hit me like a punch to the gut. The man who had been like a brother to me, now standing there, caught in the act of destroying everything we had built together. Marcos. His voice trailed off, as if he didn't know how to begin. He looked between Michelle and me, the guilt clear on his face. I felt my fists clench at my sides, anger bubbling over. You've got a lot of nerve, Stefan. After all these years, after everything we've been through, this is how you repay me? He didn't respond right away. His eyes fell to the floor, his usual confident demeanor nowhere to be found. I never meant for this to happen, said quietly, but his words felt hollow, meaningless. That's what you both keep saying, I snapped, my voice rising with the intensity of my emotions. It wasn't planned, wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. You both made the choice to lie to me, betray me, over and over again. Michelle stepped forward, her voice shaking. Marcos, I'm sorry. We didn't know how to tell you. It just got out of control. Tell me? I shouted, my frustration boiling over. You were never going to tell me. You were going to keep sneaking around, lying to my face, making me think I was the problem. Stefan finally looked up, his eyes filled with regret, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine or just an attempt to save face. Marcos, I swear I didn't mean for any of this to hurt you. It got complicated. Complicated? I repeated, incredulous. You've been sleeping with my girlfriend, Stefan. There's nothing complicated about it. You betrayed me, plain and simple. The room was thick with silence for a moment. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, the weight of their betrayal suffocating me. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make them feel even a fraction of the pain they had caused me. Michelle's sobs broke the silence, face buried in her hands as she cried. But I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not after everything she had done. I turned to Stefan, the man I thought I knew so well. Why? My voice was quieter now. Broken. Why did you do it? Was I not enough for either of you? Stefan shook his head, his voice soft with regret. It wasn't about that, man. I don't even know how it started. But it wasn't about you. His words felt like salt in the wound. Not about me? Scoff. Of course it's about me. You both chose to betray me, to hurt me, and now you're standing here acting like you don't know how it happened. You could have stopped at any moment, but you didn't. You just kept going. I felt my chest tighten as the realization hit me. This wasn't just about the cheating. This was about trust, about loyalty. They had taken something sacred and crushed it, leaving me with nothing but broken pieces. I trusted you, I whispered, pain finally overwhelming the anger. I loved you both, and you destroyed that. Neither of them said anything, their silence louder than any apology they could have given. I could see the shame in their faces, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. Without another word, I turned and walked out the door, the weight of their betrayal heavy on my shoulders. The apartment felt emptier than it had ever been. I had been so used to sharing it with Michelle, filling the space with laughter, with arguments, with love. Now it was just me, a hollow shell of what once was, surrounded by the remnants of a life that had been torn apart. It's strange how quiet things become when the people who filled them with noise are gone. The silence was deafening, and every corner of the apartment seemed to echo with the ghosts of my past. I spent days staring at the walls, trying to reconcile the person I was before everything fell apart with the person I was now. Someone who had been hurt, betrayed, and left to pick up the pieces. I was finding it hard to focus on anything. Work became a blur, and my friends, who had tried to offer support, were met with my withdrawn demeanor. I had always been good at masking my emotions, but now the facade felt like it was slipping away, exposing the raw, vulnerable core of my pain. One day, I found myself walking through a park near my apartment. It was a crisp autumn day, the leaves crunching underfoot, the sky a muted gray. I had no real destination, just an aimless wander in hopes that maybe some fresh air and a change of scenery would clear my mind. As I walked, my thoughts drifted back to that last confrontation with Stefan and Michelle. The look of devastation on their faces had been hard to forget. I had spent so much time trying to understand why they had done what they did, why they chose to betray me in such a cruel way. I had questioned my own worth, wondering if I had somehow failed them. There was something I could have done differently. But I had to remind myself that their actions were not a reflection of me. I had to remember that I had been a good friend, a loving partner. The failure was theirs, not mine. I reached a bench under a large oak tree and sat down, staring out at the serene pond in front of me. The water was calm, undisturbed by the chaotic storm inside me. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. Over the past few weeks, I had tried to make sense of everything. I had found solace in talking to a therapist, someone who could help me process the emotions I was struggling to control. It wasn't easy, opening up about the pain, about the betrayal, but it was a necessary step in my journey towards healing. I had also started to reconnect with old friends, those who had been on the periphery of my life, but whom I had neglected in favor of my relationship with Michelle and my friendship with Stefan. They welcomed me back with open arms, and their support reminded me that I wasn't alone in this. There were people who cared, who wanted to help me rebuild. One evening, I decided to make a change. I started by clearing out the apartment, packing up the things that reminded me of Michelle and Stefan. It was a painful process, but it was also therapeutic. Each item I put away was like a step towards reclaiming my space, my life. As I packed, I came across a box of old photographs, memories from happier times. I paused over one particular photo. Michelle and me at a beach, laughing, arms around each other. We looked so happy, so in love. It was a stark contrast to the reality of our last days together. I took a moment to mourn the loss, to acknowledge the good times that had been overshadowed by the pain. It was important for me to let go of the anger and resentment that had consumed me. Forgiveness was not about excusing their behavior, but about freeing myself from the burden of holding on to the hurt. I realized that in order to move forward, I needed to let go of the past, to stop letting it dictate my future. One afternoon, while I was walking in the park, I met someone new. Her name was Anna, and she was a painter with a gentle demeanor and an infectious smile. We struck up a conversation, and I found that I enjoyed talking to her. It was refreshing to interact with someone who didn't know about my past, who saw me for who I was in the present moment. We began to see each other more frequently, sharing stories, laughter, and simple moments of connection. Anna's presence in my life was a reminder that there was still beauty in the world, that there was still the possibility for new beginnings. She didn't replace Michelle, but she offered me a chance to experience joy again, find hope in the midst of my healing process. One day, I found myself sitting in a cafe with Anna, a warm cup of coffee in hand, looking out at the bustling street. I felt a sense of calm that had been missing for so long. Pain was still there, but it was no longer the center of my existence. It was a part of my journey, but it didn't define me. The betrayal had taught me a lot about myself. It had shown me my strength, my capacity for forgiveness, and my ability to rebuild from the ashes of my shattered trust. I had learned that while I couldn't control other people's actions, I could control how I responded to them. I was slowly finding my footing again, piecing together the fragments of my life and discovering that even in the midst of heartbreak, there was a chance for renewal. It wasn't an easy path, and there were still moments of doubt and sadness. But with each step forward, I was learning to embrace the possibility of a brighter future. As I looked out the cafe window, I saw the world moving on, people going about their lives, finding their own paths. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I knew that, despite everything, I had the strength to keep moving forward, find happiness and fulfillment in the next chapter of my life. The journey wasn't over, but I was no longer lost in the darkness of betrayal. I was finding my way back to the light, one step at a time. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you next time.